that Richelle McKim is the director of Summit Homeschool Academy, and she'll talk today about free homeschool without giving up your freedom. And then we can have a little chat after that. So that'll be great. Thank you so much and welcome.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. It's an honor. I'm a mom. I have a ninth grader, a senior in high school, and an almost 21-year-old junior in college. And I've gone to charter schools and neighborhood schools and have struggled with different things in each one and have loved things about each one. But ultimately, we have decided to homeschool. So that's how we got started. It was developed 2 years after the need that I had. My then 7th grader, it was 2020. He wasn't going to have any quality of education being online. We also learned that there wasn't really any routine built into the schedule. They would change classes. It was very disorganized on how we're going to find information. Some teachers had their own websites, some had Google Classroom. They were still struggling with that, but mostly was the quality of education and the screen time. We just decided to avoid that. So I was one of those people who said, I will never homeschool. Homeschooling is not for me. I'm a mother. I have a professional life. I don't know how to do it. It was overwhelming, but I decided to figure it out. And we focused on core academics. We did math, science, and history. And I decided that he would get his English from history, from reading and writing about his history. But after 4 months, we had massive academic success. He, as a 7th grader, was in a 5th grade math level. And in 4 months, we used Singapore math, the second semester 6th grade program, which is called 6B. And he was ahead of his peers by the time he went back in the spring semester. And I learned what a benefit and how rich the education is when you're one-on-one with your kid. And the relationship and the connection that we developed through that was amazing. But trying to find it was overwhelming. And then we ultimately gave it up because he said, Mom, I want somebody else to tell me what to do, not just your face. And I need friends. So he went back to school. We weren't incredibly happy with it. At that time, they would switch. There was some days he was at school, some days he was on. At the end of the year, they were full-time back. And then he went back the second year and we're like, it has to be better this year. It wasn't. We ended up ending the year at Liberty University Academy online. But during the course of that 8th grade year, I was introduced to an organization in Colorado called BOCES. It's a Board of Collaborative Education School, I think. But they're an authorizing or a chartering authorizer that can authorize any school in the state, whether it be physical, brick and mortar, or online, homeschool, full-time. They have the authority to charter it anywhere in the state, which means that I'm not authorized by our school district, and I'm in Douglas County School District, and it's in a lot of political upheaval. It is not well funded, I would say. I am happy about the superintendent that we have now, but it's so bureaucratic and so political that really the focus isn't on our kids. And it's been that way for a while. So I wanted to be able to homeschool him with professionals, to have professional support in math, English, and science. That I knew that parents didn't always, like me, didn't always feel confident. Like Josh was saying, parents don't always feel equipped to be able to take on the full responsibility because we haven't been raised to do it, or it hasn't been modeled for us. And it's overwhelming when you go to find your curriculum, what's going to be the best curriculum. And so I decided, me and 4 other parents, to go to this BOCES and submit an application so that we could be a publicly funded homeschool. And we get 50% of the funding as a full-time student. So a little over $4,000 per child, and you get that for a full year funding for each student. The other thing was we were the only school in Castle Rock, I think only the second in Douglas County that is homeschool that supports math. And I feel like that's by design. There's a lot of homeschool enrichment programs out there. They're public, they're free, but they help you with the arts. They help you with socialization, and they're all focused on socialization. But our families, we have 43 children our first year. Our families care about academics, and they really care about their kid not being indoctrinated. Like minds attract like people, and we have a whole school. We have 28 families that are on board with what my heart was. And with the help of professional educators, we have all of our teachers are exceptional. They're all well qualified. They care about kids. They know how to teach kids, and they also know how to teach parents how to teach at home if they're stuck, if they need teaching method suggestions. So we finally got approved on May 3rd. We started recruiting. We opened August 22nd. It's a 30-week program. And when I said we're offering free education because it's paid for with public funds without giving up your freedom, the key to any organization is leadership. We have amazing leadership with BOCES. They care about serving kids. They pass 95% of all of the tuition they get for our program and all of their programs. They only keep 5% for administrative purposes. They don't they don't care about building committees, bringing in expensive speakers. They care about passing as much money as they can to people that they have put in place so that they can invest all of that money into the children. And I also say that about the schools. The key to keeping it free is to have a leader in the school, such as myself, that really cares about freedom of education for your kids. So I will always protect our families by, one, choosing classical education. Classical education is rooted in what is true, what is beautiful, and what is good. It states that there is a truth. A bunch of kids from our school have to take remedial math. It's just well known. If you go on to college, you're going to have to take remedial math, even though you got A's. It's so in our school, we chose only classical education. It's free of indoctrination. Parents are given a teacher's edition as well, and they teach their kids at home. We do the heavy lifting of introducing the concepts. The parents know exactly what we've taught and exactly what they need to teach at home with their lessons. So they're 100% tied in to any of the messaging. All of our messaging is classically based, and what I have learned is that that is the most conservative education you can get. And it is the richest education you can get because it's rooted in logic. It's the full embodiment of education. And there are no ulterior motives to the classical curriculum. There's other than we want you to understand what truth is. We want you to understand what good is. It encourages children to think for themselves, but it also fully integrates virtues. So that's what we've chosen. And the freedom of education or free education without giving up freedom. This is an authorizer. I just want people to know that this option is out there, that if there is an education need that you have and there is a small community, one school started with 12 children. It was a mom who took on the leadership role, and it was more like a co-op, so they had helpers come in every day. But they were able to get education for free because not everybody can afford it. Not every family has the ability to homeschool because both parents might need to work. But but they made it work, at least with these 3, and it ended up being huge. I think they have over 1,000 students now. But you can go to a BOCES, submit your idea on what you want to do, and if it is viable, if it is innovative, if it is truly serving the needs of kids, they will help you become a public school with public funding, without giving up your freedom, without. Our school uses no technology. We have Singapore math out of books. We have English using writing and rhetoric and logic from Classical Academic Press. And the little ones, learning how to read, we use All About Learning, All About Spelling. It's also classically based. The poison is always in the details. So it doesn't matter if it's a great curriculum, if the content that you're reading is skewed and it takes away traditional values and it takes away traditional virtues and it tries to reprogram children with content. The classically based content is what people have been using for over 1,000 years. It doesn't have modern philosophy and conflicting virtues woven throughout. So that is what we were rooted in. Our science is centripetal press. It's Novara science, but it's been adapted. So it's non-sectarian. For the big kids, and the little kids is experimental sciences. Everything has a textbook. We do not grade our children. The parents grade the children. We ask that they bring in unit tests that they've done at home so that the teachers can see if like everybody's missed concept, they probably need to go back over it. We offer online, that is one thing we do, is offer online tutoring. So if a child, we have one family that probably should have been at a lower level math. It was more of an emotional decision, and they decided that they wanted their children to be at the higher level math. Well, if they're struggling at home and the mom isn't amazing at teaching Singapore math, they can log on and they can get help and they can keep going and their kids can be successful. And we tried to beef up as many supports as we can so that parents can use us truly as an enrichment, but that we are not taking over their children. I don't want my son to be educated by other people and have other people's values. But I do want him to be educated. And I cannot afford private schools. These families, some of our families, there's 4 and 5 kids going to our school. They can't afford private schools. Our schools around here in Colorado, the cheapest one I know of is in Castle Rock. It's $8,000 a year. Denver Prep is $13,000. Valor, I think, is up to over $20,000. Regis is $22,000. This is for kindergarten. So if you are able to homeschool, you can homeschool, you can get support, you won't be alone, your kids can have classmates, you can have beginning of the year and end of the year days, you can have a whole community that comes alongside of you and you're not alone and your children aren't alone and you don't feel isolated, so that you can really sustain a homeschool in your home. And that is what I wanted to tell everybody about.
Wow, also very interesting. And my main question, I'm just trying to kind of envision this, Richelle, is that you mentioned that you have this school. Is it, do you have any sort of brick and mortar location, or is it online, or is it a little bit of both? How does that work?
Because of how often parents are coming back and forth, dropping off their children, logistically, we only have 3 classrooms. It's brick and mortar, and it's a modular building behind a church. And our church, they let us rent it via a donation. And each classroom is a subject. And even the kindergartners go from English to math to science. They just rotate their subjects. The little ones come 2 days a week for 3 hours. So they go to, because they're too small to sit there for more than an hour in a classroom.
Absolutely.
And they do get to get out and have a little break if they need to get their wiggles out. But yes, they come 2 days a week from 8:30 to 11:30. And Tuesdays we have the big kids, 7th and 9th graders. There's no eighth graders signed up this year. And then the middles, the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders come on Tuesdays. And because some families they come every day, we decided to do the tutoring online. It's just group tutoring, and they sign up with a Sign Up Genius, and then they have a Google Meets, which is not like, I don't like that. I don't like Zoom. I don't like the data privacy concerns, any of it, but logistically it made the most sense this year. We don't use Google Classroom, but I needed to streamline communication for homework. So we use Homeschool Panda. It's completely closed. It's, as far as I know. And it has emails, kids' names, and that's it. It doesn't have addresses. It stinks that they have to have an individual email. If anybody knows of any data solutions for that, that would be amazing.
That would be good. We'll be plugging in your website and your phone number in the show notes below. So, if anybody has any questions, I hope you'd be okay if they reach out to you to check into that.
Yes, I'd love that.
Okay, and there's no government strings attached to the funding or minimal.
No, I know it's mind blowing. Like I said, it's all in the leadership.
Okay.
Our BOCES, we have to provide, well, and I don't give anything to them. I just am required to provide a proof of identity. So they have to send me at least a picture of the birth certificate. And I am required to collect either immunization records or a statement of exemption. And I'm allowed to collect that in any form they want. They could scribble it on a napkin and that would be enough for me. But I also, like I said, I don't give them any of that information. I'm just required to collect it for compliance sake. My record keeping is a registration form so that they can be identified for funding. So I can't commit fraud, and I can't say, hey, I have these kids in my program, but they're not really in my program. So the state database has a student number associated with every kid, so that you can't be counted twice, and you have to be a person to be counted. So I have to do a registration form. I have to take attendance, and I have to collect proof of identity and the statement of exemption. And the only thing I give to my authorizer is my enrollment information. And that is it. But that's also because we're homeschool. If we became a full-time school, then that's when, like Josh was saying, all of those standards kick in. You can be a charter and you can waiver out of a lot of them. I would say a model school is Liberty Commons. They're in Fort Collins. They would have been the first charter school in Colorado, but it was second because it took 2 years to get their charter. They had to work with Boulder School District, who didn't want them. The community did, though. And they opened the first year with 150 kids and a wait list, K through 6. And now they're K through 12. They're the highest performing school. They're classically based. They are, when you talk about the LGBTQ indoctrination in the schools that's seeping in, Colorado is the bullseye. We are the target. The Masterpiece Cake, do you remember that?
No, I don't. What's that?
The man who owns Masterpiece Cake was approached by a gay couple, and they asked him, and he's a Christian, that's why he calls it Masterpiece.
It's coming back now. Yes, I do remember that story.
They asked him to make an image of 2 men as the cake toppers. And he said, I can't do that. He would have made them the cake, but like, go get your own cake topper. And so they sued him on discrimination. They won at the Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court, on grounds that nobody can require you to produce an artistic product that goes against your faith. Because of that, I forgot the name of the man, but he runs Seicus, Seicus. He said, the wicked will pay. The wicked are Christians. So he wanted to get back at Christians, and this is how he got back at them with children through sexual ideas that blaspheme a Christian belief and getting it to their children. SIECUS is it's the head of the beast, if you would. They are the ones who've determined that K through 12 sexuality should be normalized. They are the ones who have created cartoon graphics of pornographic images, and they're introducing it in 6th grade, so it'll be normalized. The LGBT programming has become part of the standards that have been set by SIECUS, SEICUS. And they are able to do this because the Gill Foundation and a bunch of other very rich trust fund heirs have funded all of it, who are also gay. And they also hate Christians. And so my question has always been, where are the rich Christians? Why aren't they funding schools, Christian schools? Where are they?
The focus is just so not where it should be. It's not in the children's best interest. And you're probably familiar with the program, Comprehensive Sexualization Education, and the normalizing of sex, the book that's in so many school libraries. I think it's called Gender Queer, the program that's called Genderbread Man, or something like that, where it's just, I just don't think it's healthy. And there's
And if we don't have enough time to educate our children properly, we don't have enough time for that. Our kids, the quality of education has declined steadily year over year over year, and pouring money into it hasn't helped. I think we're spending 3 times the amount that we did in 1980, and we haven't improved our results because it's not being spent on the children.
Right. And you're probably familiar with the late John Taylor Gatto. He was a big proponent of children in public schools, government schools. Their time was being wasted. So many hours they had to invest each day to sit in a classroom, to respond to a bell. He said it's almost like Pavlov's dogs. He said it teaches a child, for example, that whatever project they were working on at the time the bell went off isn't important enough to allow them time to finish it. But the bell rings, you got to push it all together and get to the next classroom. And just their time is being wasted, and it's not quality, and they're not getting enough physical activity and the nature, and way too much screens. So
it's very efficient. Our teachers were public educators, and they could not wait to get out of it. They can't support it. They watched how wasteful it was, and they wanted to teach kids well, and they weren't allowed to. They say writing and rhetoric starts for us in 4th grade. Book number 1 is in 4th grade, well-ordered language and writing and rhetoric. Well-ordered language is like grammar diagramming, sentence diagramming. And she goes, there's a lot in here. It's kind of overwhelming for these kids, especially because they've had a lot of informal education up until this year. We have about 2/3 of our families have been homeschooling, mostly for the last 2 years. And then 1/3 of us are like new homeschoolers.
Right.
So I said, it's okay if one lesson takes 3 weeks, as long as it's rich and it's meaningful. And they're like, what? I'm allowed to do that?
Oh my, yeah, there's so much structure. And I love the fact that you don't grade. And, my husband and I helped homeschool our neighbor's daughter for the last 2 years. And we didn't have any idea what we were doing, but we had a spare bedroom that we set up as a classroom. But so, I said, let's follow the curriculum. One of our curriculums was that of questions. Come up with a good question. And for example, one of her questions was, what color skin do zebras have?
Oh.
So we researched that, and I said, you know what, we're learning right along with you. And even if we knew the answer when she asked a question, let's find out, let's go to the dictionary for the first stop. But we found out that they have black skin, for example. And, it's just so rich, and lots of field trips and things like that, and no grading. So, it's just more healthy. And John, do you have, when you want to jump in, I bet you have all sorts of questions. Are you familiar with this type of concept? Do they have that in Illinois? Have you heard of it elsewhere?
Well, so the chartering process is different by state, and so is the reporting process and requirements. So you don't have to report any outcomes as far as like learning outcomes. So I know you have to collect certain records, but you don't have to yearly or annually report what they call learning outcomes. Sometimes they're national or state standards, or just something to show that they've reached a benchmark.
No, there's some in our charter, we had to create KPIs. You have to have some sort of credibility, and you can't show up and say that you're offering something without proving that you're actually delivering it. So our deliverables are that kids show up. So there's a participation that we require in order to get a certificate of completion. You have to show up, and then you get your certificate of completion. So for our families, it's all that matters. For me as a school, I have promised that I'm going to provide quality education. So one of our metrics is that we retain students the next year. At least 90% of our kids want to come back. That's a huge measure of success. And it's not about learning outcomes and individual information for our children. It's, are you providing a quality program? One of them is that our teachers, that I get to retain our teachers, that they like being there and they're well supported. And they get paid $50 an hour. And so I think they all like being there. And the other one is that we do want to show growth. So completely optionally, we offer MAPS assessment tests, but our proctor is through Homeschool Boss. They act as a school. And so their data points aren't sent to NWEA. They are a subset that the children are they get the nationally standardized assessment for them for growth. I give those. Anybody who pays for it, you are the one who receives the report. I want to pay for that for the families. So I pay for it. I can get the reports. I send it to the families, and I don't keep it. And at the end of the year, I'm going to aggregate the growth. I want to show that we have credibility.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Were you finished? Or were you still going?
No, that's it.
Oh, my other question? So you said that one of the records that they make you keep collect is immunization records?
In Colorado, you're required to collect either immunization records or a statement of exemption.
Okay.
So almost everybody just, there's a form that the Christian Home Educators of Colorado, CHEC is an association, and they have this form, and I put it out there as, hey, here's a template if you want to use it. Or you can just send me an email and say, these are my children, and I'm giving you a statement of exemption. You can write it on a napkin. That's it.
What do you think might happen if one day you were audited as far as those types of napkin style records, though?
It's acceptable because our authorizer accepts it. BOCES is allowed to do that, and that's their charter with the state.
That's what so their agreement with the state, that's the language in their agreement?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, this is just something I'm asking questions because, as I sort of surmised, is that, there often have been sort of more flexibility, but it doesn't preclude the possibility of later down the line, especially if things become more politically polarized, and you know what I mean, that eventually, that they might ask for something more formal, right? Or something like that. And and by the way, I mean, I just need to say this because obviously I did a whole presentation on, not to take public funds for homeschools, but I do not judge anybody's decision to go public or private or charter. I'm teaching online right now because I don't want to get my jab. So I'm feeding the data monster that I wrote an entire book about. I mean, we all have to, right? We all have to make our decisions and navigate this world. And so I just wanted to put that out there that like, these questions are not to sort of grill you. I'm learning. I want to learn like how this actually works on the other end of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm ticked with the data mining when I looked at my other kids because I used to submit the immunization records. It's on my daughter's transcript. So I had their information wiped clean from CIIS, the Colorado Department of Health database. I had them opted out. I know that it was wiped clean because I had to call a doctor to get immunization records from when they were little. And she said I couldn't find anything on the database. So I know that when she looks, nothing's there. But I know that there's a shadow database and the schools are keeping the records locally. I am not keeping those records. If they give it to me, I have to accept it. I don't want it. And we have talked before about how, well, right now this is working. Who knows what our future holds? But if in 3 years, 2 years, they're going to require things that conflict with my convictions, I can sell all of our assets to myself for $1. And we can continue with our homeschool without public funds. But for now, we get it. And right now, we can build a school. And most importantly, and why I really cared about doing this, is we can build a community. Once you have a community, that's your resource to be able to do. But I can't tell you how hard it was for me to find community. And I really wanted to be committed to it. I found a bunch of people that didn't fit into the system, and that's why they homeschooled, and that's not why we were homeschooling. And since opening this school, I have found a bunch of kids, they're not homeschooling because they don't fit. They're homeschooling because they don't want indoctrination and they want a quality education. So finding that community has been paramount in being successful. And I know that that's what makes the school successful and meaningful.
It sounds like it's a really, I hate to use the term necessary evil, but perhaps it's a really good bridge between the purest homeschool, no connection with government, indoctrination, etc., having to do a set curriculum, with being under the thumb of the government schools. So can you, once you get going, Richelle, can you, I can relate to about our first meeting. We had a couple of women in talking about how to set up a co-op in your community, a couple of different ways. One was a little bit more structured than another. And I've had a friend who's tried to do it on her own, just kind of organically through her own social network, and she was telling me some of the downsides of that. For example, the personalities come in, and it was during the pandemic early days when some moms absolutely insisted on the masks, and this was like a small environment like you're in. It was like a basement of a church, and they were insisting on the masks and all of that. And they were just having such differences of opinion that it wasn't pleasant to just even interact with one another. So I don't know, seems like a fairly good thing. I kind of don't like the thought of having to do the public funds though, because that seems like that's control that you need.
And you don't have to.
Yeah.
I asked, I'm like, I know the answer is no, but I found out the answer was yes. BOCES said that we can accept students if they want to be tuition based, and I never report them to the state. There's nothing I have to do. And they said, just leave them off of enrollment, and that's acceptable. They're allowed to do that. And I'm one of the tuition based students. My son is, because he's in a different public program to be a pilot. It's called Aero Lab, and he gets his ground training and his flight training, like 10 hours of flight training, all of his ground training for $700. To us, that was a greater value. So I'm paying tuition to my school. And there we have 4 other tuition-based kids because they're in other public homeschool programs. But when you go to register, you can go to summitha.com. If you go to enroll now or register and hit the button, there are 3 options. You can enroll as a publicly funded student. You can enroll as a tuition-based student because you're in another program, or you can enroll as a tuition-based student. I don't want anybody else getting my information. They don't even have to give me their birth certificate. I don't care, as long as they pay.
Mm-hmm. Well, interesting. Like with this group, we don't ask anyone to follow whatever we're into or believe, that we just hope to provoke curiosity. So if you're interested in a topic, a subtopic, that you'll do your own research and make up your own mind. So what you both have contributed today is certainly contributed to that. So thank you so much. And I invite you both to send me any information of links of additional information you'd like included, and they'll be in the video below. So do either of you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that, I mean, and I sort of framed it that way when I did my little presentation. A lot of that stuff, like I said, it could be stuff that, especially just to use Richelle's organization as an example, may not be a clear and present danger, but just something to keep an eye out for down the line, right? And that's, but it sounds like what you got going is really good, and I'm glad it's working for you.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for warning us about the dangers of the data. It really is hard to understand everything that's going on. So people that have insight into it like you do, especially from an insider perspective as a public educator, I would like to learn more.
Yeah. Anytime I got send me an email or we can Zoom or whatever. If you need any help with grammar, rhetoric, logic out there, I could be a Zoom tutor maybe or something. I'd be happy to do that. But just keep in touch, and we'll try to collaborate in some way.
Thank you.
I love this networking. It is so great. It's what it's all about. So I'm grateful for our growing tribe of SAGs, and we're going to be building this and growing. And I want to hear from all of you, whether just within our group. We would love to have more join us, and just let me know. I'll have my email address below as well, and we'll add you to our confidential email group. And I have a YouTube channel. It's called Zips Media, but I'm also on Rumble and BitChute. So we will be posting this there, and we're just going to be growing this. And let us know what you'd like to hear more of, any recommendations for presenters, and that would be great. We'll just keep it going. So I appreciate everything. And thank you so much to both of you. I really appreciate your time and all you are and do, and great stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.